Welcome, everybody, to episode 22 of the Hunt Backcountry podcast, presented by XO Mountain Gear. Tonight, Steve and I welcome our good buddy Jason Wright back to the show. Jason, as you might remember, has been on talking before about mule deer, but tonight we're talking about something timely, and that's wolf hunting. So Jason has a unique perspective. He's harvested a couple wolves himself and just has some interesting and I think helpful opinions and insight about the whole topic in general. We talk about where to hunt, we talk about when to hunt, some of the gears and tactics you want to use, and of course discuss the controversy. You know, wolves are one of those topics where people on polar extremes, both sides of the topics, they want to kill them all, they want to leave them all alone, and as usual, I think there's balance in the middle that can be had. And now, onto the show with Jason.
The Hunt Backcountry podcast is proudly brought to you by XO Mountain Gear, makers of ultralight, ultra-tough packs that are designed to do what you love most, hunt the backcountry. XO packs are designed for efficiency, simplicity, and durability that's backed by a lifetime warranty. To learn more about XO Mountain Gear, please visit www.xomountaingear.com.
All right, well, Jason, Steve, welcome to the podcast. Excited to talk about wolves tonight. It's definitely an interesting topic.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, so you guys, especially as Idaho hunters, you know, one of, I guess, just a few states that can hunt wolves, right? So it's Idaho, Montana, Wyoming has, but are they still on hold, do you know? I heard that things kind of got put on hold there.
You know, I'm kind of narrow focused. I know Montana does, but I'm not sure about Wyoming like you.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was, reading up on it a little bit, and as of earlier this fall, at least, I think going into this season in the beginning of 2016, it was, kind of being fought over and on hold. So we'll have to certainly check out and see if that's the case. But yeah, handful of states, that allow the hunting of wolves, and you guys being Idaho hunters are certainly in the mix of that. Have you guys noticed in terms of wolf numbers increasing over the years, first-hand experience on how that's affected, either numbers or behavior of other games, like elk and deer as you guys are out in the field?
I've noticed more on the winter range than anything else.
Yeah.
There's a couple spots where I used to pick up a lot of elk antlers, and they were kind of my little honey holes. That it's where I've seen most of my wolves that I've seen. And it definitely, it went from, you can go in and see anywhere from 10 to 30 bulls in there. And now I don't see anything in there. Occasionally you'll see a group of cows or, a few bulls here and there, but it's pretty rare. I don't even go there anymore just because there's not much left. So,
yeah. And
I'm not saying that wolves have decimated everything and just that
it's
place.
Affected that area for sure.
Yeah, I don't find anything there anymore. So.
Yeah. When I was really just starting to get into elk hunting, we had an area that we hunted and it was good hunting. And then every year, just like one or two more wolf sightings or we'd hear them at night or cut across tracks. And it was a progression of like 4 years where, it went from like hearing just one night hearing howls to 4 years later, almost daily wolves were in the area. You'd cut fresh tracks or something like that, and the elk hunting just took a complete dive. And I'm not totally convinced they killed all the elk. I just think the elk found ways to survive, and that was holing up on north, thick, nasty slopes where they weren't talking, and you necessarily couldn't see them and get in on them. So
yeah.
I haven't been back up to that area in a long time. I've heard it's, I think with hunting here in Idaho, it's recovered a little bit, that the wolves have changed their behaviors, I think. I don't know the official numbers on the dent that hunting's put on them, but I'm sure just them realizing they're getting hunted changes how they act and behave. So I'd be curious to go back up there and to that area and see what it's like.
Right, for sure. Yeah, so Jason, you have kind of an interesting history, with wolves in terms of just, the amount of time that you spend in the field. You're one of those guys that's year round, you're out there as much as possible. So you just kind of naturally get to experience that more, but you certainly made it an effort to pursue wolves as well. So can you kind of talk about, from your first encounter all the way on to some of your more recent experience with wolves and including some of your harvest?
Yeah. So I really started seeing wolves pretty heavily I'm trying to remember what year it was. I want to say it would have been like '06, '07 is when I started kind of having a lot of run-ins with them. And when I say run-ins, just either hearing them or seeing them. And so I got to where I started keeping track, because it's, you don't really forget your wolf sightings very easily. I mean, I think I remember every encounter I've had. Might forget, like, was there 4 in that pack or 6 in that pack or whatever. But so I started, keeping track of it on Google Earth. I put little thumbtacks of where I'd seen wolves, and one of the coolest encounters was I was shed hunting. I was actually bear hunting. It was in May. I had a rifle and a pistol, and I was going in to this one spot looking for one bull in particular. And I'm walking up the trail on the bottom. It's early May, and I jump a wolf off of a carcass, and it runs by like, less than 20 yards, and it runs and goes over in the trees like 60 yards and stops and just howls at me. Wow. And I'm just like, holy cow. Cause I'd seen him before that, but I'd never had like a close up encounter with him. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. So I kind of slowly walked up to the carcass, and the bull had shed, and there was just nothing but bones left for the most part. He was kind of picking it clean, and he just sat there and howled for, it felt like forever, but it was probably 10 minutes. And I filmed with my camcorder until it ran out of tape and battery and shut down on me. But he was just kind of sitting down, just howling at me. And I had my rifle on him, just like saying, come at me. 'Cause this is before any season was open. And yeah, he never gave me an excuse to to put him down, but I definitely could have, where he was sitting in the trees. So that was probably, that's what really got me kind of wound up about wolves. And then I think it was just a few years later when they had the first season on them. So
yeah. So did you start pursuing them intently right away then when those seasons opened up?
I wouldn't say intently, like I didn't go out all winter just focused on wolves, but I would probably make 2 or 3 trips around New Year's, kind of before deer sheds start dropping and after the hunts are over, and just kind of start poking around. Once the heavy snows push them down, I'd start like kind of looking around for wolf sign, and I'm trying to remember when the first close calls with a weapon in my hand happened. I think '09 I did the late bow hunt, and so I'm walking around with a bow in my hands and a rifle over my shoulder in case I saw a wolf. And sure enough, I got on a wolf, and I screwed up on it. I came over the ridge, crouched over so he wouldn't spot me, and there's elk kind of scattering, and I had just seen him just 20 minutes before that. And so I sit there and glass for like 10 minutes. And after, 10 minutes of glass, and I don't see him anywhere. And so I stand up and start walking down the ridge, and he jumps out of the bushes at like 250 yards and runs off. And I just think, if I would have just stopped right there and howled, he might have came out, showed himself, would have been game over. But that was my first kind of close call where I should have probably notched a tag on a wolf. And yeah, that was '09, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And then when was it that you had your first successful hunt? Was it just a couple of years later?
Yes, Steve was with me on that hunt. It was 2013. It was in March, and it was kind of an early, like everything was melting off and greening up, and it was a young female, and she was kind of down in some rolly, kind of grassy country. And to me, it seemed like she was hunting ground squirrels because they were starting to pop out, because she was definitely not. She was kind of roaming around. Mm-hmm. And I guess to back up on that story, me and a friend, Tim, Lenny's younger brother, we were out the day before, and we were just kind of driving around looking for sign and glassing up this canyon. And I just happened to look through the windshield of the truck, and I see this fawn kind of barreling over a hill, like just on a dead run. And right behind her on her heels was this wolf. And so me and Tim jump out of the truck, and we're laying down on the side of the road trying to get a shot on this wolf that's running right at us. And he stops at like, I can't remember if we howled to stop him or if he just stopped, because the fawn did a pretty good job of getting away. It was 150 yards, and I shot first and somehow completely missed. and then Tim shoots, and then the wolf ended up getting away. And that was the first shots fired on a wolf. And I think at that point I'd seen like 20 of them being out, over the winters. And I was just disgusted that I'd missed my one and only chance at a wolf. And so the next day, Tim couldn't go, but Steve could go, and we went back to the same spot and got on a different wolf, and it just worked out. I mean, we got it all on film too, and the the celebration after that went down. I still watch that, and just Steve is about as wound up as I was. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was quite the awesome experience for sure. I just remember it was one of those where you're just shaking for like, and it lived 45 minutes afterwards. You just couldn't hold still.
Yeah.
And I remember walking up on it. It was pretty vivid, kind of ingrained in my memory, of just walking up on a wolf because, I don't think at that point I'd ever like been within probably 100 yards, the closest I'd ever been within one. So to have one right at your feet was pretty crazy.
Yeah. I can imagine just that feeling of, such a wild, pretty elusive animal that, it's one of those things, like you mentioned, you'll hear them, you might spot them from a distance, but to actually get so up close to, a predator like that, would just be pretty incredible for sure.
It was a really lucky hunt. We basically went right back to where Tim and I had seen the wolf the day before and just started hiking up the hill thinking we'll just get up on this ridge and see what we see, to look for tracks or whatever. And just happened to look down the drainage and on like a white patch of snow, because this was March and the snow was kind of receding. There's this black wolf standing there, and it's working its way up the hill towards us. So we just kind of cut the distance, and we're sitting there on this little finger ridge. I'm sitting down and Steve's filming, and we sat there for a little bit, and I was starting to get pretty antsy. I think Steve kind of kept me in check from, like, I wanted to bounce over the ridge and look for her on the other side. And I think how long do we sit there, Steve? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 5 minutes, but felt like 30. Something like that.
And I had just like, let's get up. So I get up, and I'm just from a sitting position, I get up to like one knee, and right then I saw her come over the ridge, and she's only like 140 yards. I mean, really close. And so I'm like in a proposal stance, trying to like get situated, like, oh, I need to make a shot here soon. And the video is great because she looks right at us. Like, I kind of kick a bush or something, and right then kind of locks on and keeps walking straight towards us. And she starts to get a little squirrely and spins around, and I'm thinking, oh no, she's going to leave. And so I kind of rushed a shot and missed her as 125 yards, I think. And Steve, did you howl or did I howl? I can't remember. I think you howled.
I think I did, yeah.
And stopped her, and I jacked another round in and got her on the second shot. And after that, it was just a little bit of freak out. And it was redemption, I guess, from missing. I must get wound up with a rifle in my hands because that's pretty poor shooting, but it worked out.
Yeah. Well, you've been known to do some special second shots for sure. It's kind of your MO, right?
Yeah, I guess so. My dad would not be proud.
Well, you get the job done, man. You can't argue with that.
Yeah, I guess.
So before we dive into some specifics, let's go ahead, and I'd love to hear about, your second harvest, right? I mean, you've harvested 2 wolves, right?
Yeah.
So what's kind of the brief story in the second one, which is pretty big, it looks like, from the photos.
Yeah, that one was a little bigger than the first one. It was so the first one was last year's pup, is what the biologist told me. So there's all this, people exaggerate wolf size a lot. I mean, the 200-pound wolf just flat out doesn't happen. She was 73 pounds and nose to tail like 6 foot something, under 7 foot a little bit. So long and lanky and skinny. The second one was a male. It was a 2 to 3 year old. So that little bigger head, and it was 85 pounds, and decent sized wolf. To me, it's all cool. Not a trophy thing. It's just about the experience. But so that hunt, it was mid-January. We went up to a spot where we get into him quite a bit. Me and my brother, and we were just howling from the saddle, just kind of a good overlooking place, and we weren't getting answers, and we were getting ready to leave, and we hear this distant howl. Kind of back behind us. So we just start closing the distance, and we get into them where they're howling a lot, but it was really windy that day, and we just kept on. We were trudging through about a foot of snow at that point, just trying to get closer to where we could get eyes on them, and just never could find them. And then we just didn't hear them anymore. So we hiked back to the truck, and we were driving down the road, and we see this guy cross the road, and he had a rifle on his shoulder, and so I pull up and asked him if he's wolf hunting, and he said, "Yeah, there's a whole pack right up there on the hill." And it's just a funny small world thing. It's Rob McConnell, who now is a good friend of all of ours, and and so we drive around the corner, and he points them out to us, and there's this pack sitting up. They were 1,700 feet straight above the road. I mean, just straight up like a 35-degree slope. And Rob had just been up the hill and back down, and he was like, "I don't know if I want to go back up there." And I'm like, "Well, there's wolves there. Let's go." You know, you don't get opportunities like this very often. So I talked everyone into going up the hill, and my brother made it about halfway, and he has a mechanical valve in his heart, and he had just quit smoking, and he's like, "I'm going to stay right here. I'm going to stay right here in glass for you guys." And so me and Rob continued up the hill, and I'm almost running up the hill, just trying to get up there as fast as I can. But I don't want to I wanted to give Rob a fair shake too. So I'm, trying to give us both a chance. And then we get up to where we think we should see him. We kind of split up. I went right and he went left, and I just jumped one at 40 yards. And, the first shot was I felt like it was John Wayne off the hip, but, it was, I actually pulled up and I clipped him in the top of the back, and he ran off and did a little spin like dogs will do when they're hit. And then he just took off on a dead run, and Rob was shooting at another one. And on the last shot, I got him at like 300 yards on a dead run, and just total luck. I mean, especially for me, I was leading him by a full dog length, and yeah, pull and pray kind of thing. And it worked out. So, yeah. So I don't know if I'm just a lot of luck involved for sure on that day.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do spot and stalk, wolf hunting, it's a lot of luck's just going to be involved. If you start looking at the actual numbers of wolves in the state of Idaho, elk hunting's hard enough, and we have like 50, 60,000 elk. What are you talking about? Like at most 1 to 2,000. I don't even know what Fish and Game says the numbers are anymore, but the odds are just pretty low. I think it's just getting out there and covering a lot of country and just being smart about it, and hopefully one day they cross your path.
Yeah. So
exactly.
One thing, just as someone who's harvested wolves, Jason, and there's obviously that's been posted online, and you've shared that some through Pure Relation and things like that. Are you intentional at all about how you sort of handle that? Because certainly it's one of those sensitive issues that anti-hunters and wolf advocates can kind of go crazy about. So is that something that you were sort of concerned with in terms of sharing that harvest, or did you approach it a certain way because of those issues?
Not initially, especially on the black one. I think Steve took a picture of the teeth or something on the drive home, posted it up, and we kind of went out of cell phone service, and it had blown up by the time we got home. And then we posted a few pictures after that, and it got some. The pro wolf crowd they're so emotional, and they don't want to see anything happen to their wolves, and I get it. They're dogs to them, but yeah. So I wasn't on the first one, but since then, absolutely. I think it's a real delicate, slippery slope thing that I think everyone should approach thoughtfully and not kind of give us a black eye. And I don't think any of our posts did. They were all respectful. I think that, Steve, you remember when we were taking pictures of the black one, like trying to get all the blood off it, make sure everything's, to not offend or inflame anybody. But yeah, I'm really, to kind of get up on a pedestal a little bit, or soapbox or whatever. I'm in Idaho. I think the consensus amongst everyone we know and hunters is, this only good wolf is a dead wolf, and shoot, shovel, and shut up. And I mean, it's just common to see bumper stickers, kill an elk or kill a wolf, save 100 elk. And it's just, they're not well received here. And I get so tired of hearing the only good wolf is a dead wolf, and kill them all, and all these, things that people are screaming in a public forum. I mean, to me, all it does is make us look like, cause I mean, even if we might want that a little bit to increase our deer and elk numbers, you can't go out there and just be screaming that, because it just paints us all in this narrow focused, eradication mode,
Yeah.
So, and they obviously use that against us. So I think, the smarter way, because in the end, it's like I like Steve Ranella. He's always saying that right now hunting is well received by the general public. The majority of the people agree with hunting, or at least have a favorable opinion of it. And the minute that changes and they vote our hunting rights away, then what? So I kind of take that same thing with wolf hunting is, if you're going to put anything out there of a harvest picture or whatever, at least do it with a little bit of class and respect, and don't poke the bear any more than you need to, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's unintentional, but, and this is true of anything. I mean, it's true of politics. It's true of, hunters and anti-hunters. We as hunters see the anti-hunting side as, often pretty extreme, some of which is certainly justified, very emotional, certain things like that. Again, certainly justified in some cases. But, if we jump to our own end of the extreme and we're just, polar opposites yelling at each other, nothing really helpful is going to come from that. And so there's certainly, I think it's tough to do, to find a way to completely stand to your convictions and your values without just being so overtly brash that, you're no good. And
True.
So it's like, it's like, how do you not compromise, but at the same time be somewhat palatable, considering that others watching. And it's not so much to appease the other extreme, right? It's to kind of what you were hinting at with Ranella. It's to stay in a good light for that middle ground, because that's where most people are, right? The extreme on either end might be the loudest, but most people are going to be in the middle ground. And so we certainly don't want to alienate ourselves, I think, from the highest number of people who, as you mentioned, can vote and do other things to take our rights away, for sure.
Absolutely. So, Steve, if you killed a wolf tomorrow, would you put the pictures out there and post it all over everywhere, or would you kind of be a little reserved?
Oh, I'm sure I'd be pretty reserved about it. Whatever pictures I did post, it wouldn't be any different what you did of doing it in a manner that just reflects good back upon us, of, just being conscientious that it is something that's, took a long time to be able to hunt wolves, and obviously it's back and forth, and, I don't know. I would definitely just be do it with as much class as possible, and explain in a scientific manner if I could, as I harvested this wolf, and we're gonna save. I guess I don't know where I'm going with this, but try to put some numbers and facts out there that we're conserving elk and deer and everything else, and wolf numbers, wolf need to be hunted just like every other thing to be kept in check.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a small group, a Facebook group here in Idaho. It's kind of northern Idaho group. But some guy killed a wolf and he put it on the hood of his truck and drove around through small towns, which most people in that town probably would be like, hey, right on. But, a big city person or some outsider sees that and they're going to be horrified.
Yeah.
The parading it around like that. And that's the kind of stuff that really, it just can't go on, in my opinion. As far as if we want to continue to hunt wolves and have it open to us, you got to kind of keep that in check.
Yeah. So what is this, current state of affairs in terms of, wolf hunting in Idaho? Is it one of those things where there's constantly talks of changing regulations, and, do you feel like the delisting is, at least at this point, safe for the foreseeable future?
I think it's kind of reviewed annually. The biologists have to get out there and get population estimates, and then the antis kind of run with that. And I think it just depends on what judge they get it in front of. As the progression, like the first season we had, I want to say it was 08 or 09, and then the very next year, what's that?
I think 09.
09, okay.
Yeah.
The very next year they shut it down, and of course I saw a ton of wolves that year, but in rifle range. But and then after that it was open back up again. So I think it's just every year they're going to kind of battle it, because the pro wolf crowd, they don't want any wolf hunting, and the biologists with Fish and Game are, they just want to manage it and prove to the feds that we can manage it on a state level and keep the populations above. I think their objectives were around 1,000 or however many breeding pairs. Don't quote me on that, but as long as they can continue to prove that and kind of keep the pro wolf crowd at bay and say, hey, here's all this documentation, look what we got, and we're doing fine, then I think we'll be good for a while, but you never know.
Yeah.
Jason, didn't you talk to like somebody from Fish and Game about because we were contemplating putting out the wolf video from the first one, and we ended up not, based off of, just we just consider the ability to hunt these as something very fickle, and we don't want to upset people to, that kind of anti-liberal crowd is just they just like to get big rallies together, and they get all, huffy puffy about little things. So giving them more excuses to do it. So, Jason, didn't you talk to somebody that said like, please don't do that video. Don't give them any reason to get all upset and
actually, I brought it up about just the whole process, and I like to film everything, and as a lady biologist, so my second wolf was collared, and you can't really see in the pictures, but she had actually trapped and collared that wolf, which I thought was so cool that she trapped two, she thought they're the same age, from the same litter, about the same size male, and she collared them, and one collar had quit working, and that was the collar that I brought back. So she said, you did us a huge favor, because now we can send it back to the company we buy the collars from, and they can get it fixed, because otherwise it's just useless to them. So I was filming her pulling a tooth for aging, and as soon as I brought the camera out, she's like, you're not going to film me, are you? And I'm like, well, I was, but she's like, do not film me. And I was like, well, can I just film the process of you pulling the tooth out? And she's like, that's fine. Just I don't want to be on camera. And I understand that. And I told her, well, I mentioned about having the hunt on film, and, we might put it out there. And she's like, you could tell she was very reserved about, I wouldn't do that. And it just kind of puts it out there in the public eye, and could cause more problems than it would be beneficial to anybody, including us. I mean, what we sell a couple DVDs or whatever, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. So,
yeah. Well, let's dive into the fun stuff. That's enough of the antis and the politics and all that. So let's talk about how to get it done. For those guys who are in those states or certainly just want to learn more about it. I just think it's fascinating anytime to learn more about different strategies to effectively hunt game, just to learn more about the pursuit, really. So, in general, timeline. I mean, in terms of elk or wolf hunting, I mean, now's a good time to be out there, right, Jason?
Yeah, now's probably the best time of the whole year, just for wolf activity. There's deep snow where we're at. All the game, all the groceries, I guess, the deer and elk are all down low, and the wolves are going to follow. So it's narrowing down the search, like Steve was saying earlier. They cover just so much country, and right now is the only time that they're kind of in one area, or their range is reduced by snow and where their food is at. So, and plus it's also the rut, so they're more likely to be vocal. From what I've found or what I've read, it's mid-January to mid-February, or even late February is when the rut takes place. So you're more likely to hear howling or have packs kind of, since they're all coming down for food, they might be stepping on each other's ranges, or, there's just more wolf activity right now than any other time of the year.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, the food. So obviously focusing on something like elk wintering areas would be sort of a good strategy to help, begin to locate them at this time.
Yeah. And to me, I mean, elk and deer kind of winter in the same areas around here for the most part. So, wherever you can go, that's like historic, classical winter range where you expect to see, hundreds, if not thousands of deer and elk even driving around. That's the first place I'd start looking, that's where they're going to be. And you could say, the higher the better, because, some of these elk will hang out really high, especially some of the bulls, up in chest deep snow, because they just refuse to come down too low. And that's where they're, most vulnerable, because for the most part, wolves can run on top of the snow, and a heavy chested bull is probably going to bust through and be pretty easy to chase down.
Yeah. Certainly going to lose the mobility game for sure.
Yeah. But it's also tough for us to get around up there without, a lot of guys hunt wolves off snow machines, and I don't have one. Steve's got two. We need to jump on that.
Yeah, we do.
So in terms of, at this point in time, I mean, you kind of mentioned it's getting into the rut, or is the rut. What are sort of the dynamics at play in terms of the interaction between wolves? I mean, do things get territorial with it being the rut? Is it, just simply a matter of mating and attraction? Like, what are some of the behavioral traits of wolves this time of year that you can sort of take advantage of in your hunting?
Well, I wish I was more of a guru on the wolf biology part about it and how they react to certain calls, but they're definitely territorial. I've had a lot of people tell me if you go out and do a coyote howl near a pack of wolves, they'll come over to run you off. And I've tried that and I've never had it work. Not saying it wouldn't work. It just, maybe there wasn't wolves nearby. But for me, this time of year and the fact that packs, like that day that I got my second one, we were on one pack in the morning and then got on another pack that Rob showed us, just a few hours later. And then across the drainage to the south, that same weekend, a guy killed a wolf out of another pack. So in a small, 10-mile area, there were 3 packs of wolves in there. So they're definitely territorial. And for me, the only thing I know to do, because we talk about this on the hill, is like, our dads didn't teach us how to wolf hunt because they didn't have wolves around. So we've just been out there kind of winging it, trying to figure it out. And so the best thing to do is get out there as early as possible. And, sometimes even before the sun comes up is good because they're more vocal at night, and just howl to locate. It's kind of like you're trying to locate elk with a locate bugle. And that's the whole battle for me, is just trying to figure out where they're at.
Yeah. And excuse my complete ignorance, but when you're howling, I mean, I know that guys just, mouth call just with their voice. Is there any other sort of calling strategy there?
There is like a bugle and bull game calls, I think it is, makes a wolf pack, or that's the name of it, the wolf pack howler. And it has like a open reed and a tube, and it is really loud. A friend of mine has one, and every now and then he'll squawk it real bad. And I don't know if that matters or not, but I just use my voice and like a grunt tube to make it louder. Mm-hmm. As far as the sound to make, I went out and bought a Fox Pro caller thinking I could learn something from the wolf vocal calls on there, but they have 2 calls to offer on the call itself. You can go online and download more different wolf sounds, but to me, they sound terrible. Nothing like any wolves I've heard personally. So I just do a howl with my mouth, and I doubt I could replicate it here into this microphone. But it's just, if you Google wolf sounds and wolf howls, it doesn't take you more than 2 minutes to realize you can replicate that with your own voice.
Yeah. YouTube is your friend at that point, right? Get the real thing.
Yeah. And me and John Abernathy years ago went out and did just a day wolf hunt, and he put together a video. It's a pretty fun video to watch. We didn't kill anything, but we saw a coyote that got me pretty excited because we saw fresh wolf tracks, and the coyote was at a distance, and I just immediately thought it was a wolf, and turns out it was a coyote. But it's a fun video, and we do some howling in there, and so if you want to see what I do, that video is a pretty good one to watch. It just has a bunch of howls in it, and
that's cool. Is that on the Pure Elevation channel of YouTube, or do you recall?
I believe, yeah, it is. It is on the Pure Elevation channel.
Okay. Well, we'll dig up that link and post it with the show notes. So if you guys want to check that out, go to exomountaingear.com/22 and get the show notes, and we'll add that link there.
There's all sorts of hate and discontent too even though there's not a wolf killed in the video, if you read the comments down below, it's a good read.
Yeah. I think the lowest point of humanity in all of the earth is YouTube comments, just in general, no matter what the video is. It draws out the craziest people for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with, we've mentioned they're very mobile, they can cover quite a bit of ground. How does that factor into your strategies? I mean, you're trying to sort of hit up ranchers for fresh intel or sightings or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely networking with anyone you can. I mean, if you really want to get a wolf over the winter, I think you need to make it your entire winter project. I mean, and most of my success has just been, dumb luck, but there's also some making your own luck and some persistence and going out. And I want to say that the second wolf, I'd been out like 10 times already that winter, and people ask me, well, what's the secret? I'm like, well, there's no secret. You just got to get out there. And that's the biggest thing. So if you can, and every time I was going out, I was running into the same guys and just talking to them, and you've been seeing any fresh sign, and talking to anyone you can talk to who's out in the hills, whether it's snowmobilers, trappers, whoever gets out there in the hills a lot, just asking questions. And, you got to take every little lead with a grain of salt. Some people might have saw a coyote and they don't really know, but yeah, networking and social media too. After, I want to say it was 2010, after the hunting season ended, I put a post on a hunting forum, Monster Muleys, and just put like official 2000 whatever wolf sighting thread. And if anyone saw something, post it up, and that was pretty nice because people would post up, saw one here, saw one there, and it definitely helps.
Yeah, that's cool. So we've kind of talked about the macro, if you will, in terms of where to hunt or locate wolves, in terms of the big picture of wintering grounds and things like that. But when it comes to sort of the micro level, the more detail, you've identified the area you're going to hunt. How are you playing that out in terms of, do you find it's helpful to use ridge lines or trails? What are some of the detailed features that you found helpful in pursuing wolves?
Well, I think wolves are definitely like us, and they like the path of least resistance. So they'll travel trails and roads and ridge tops and anything where they can cover a lot of country. Because, they say a wolf, they might travel 20 miles a day. You just never know how far they're going to travel, and they have to use the landscape to travel that much. They're not going to be crossing through every canyon. And so I definitely I check ridge tops and roads, and sometimes they'll just, if you want an easy winter wolf hunt, just go out and drive the roads and just be like a cat hunter would do, and be looking for fresh track. And if you see track, then go from there, see which way they're heading. And, definitely roads and ridge tops and trails is where you'll see the most sign. Yeah.
Cool. So as the season progresses, kind of January, February, you can certainly use snow to your advantage, things like that. But as things start to melt out and the green starts to come up, again, are there any sort of behavioral changes that you notice post-rut, or any other strategies for guys who are getting into it? And the season runs into March, right? And beyond.
Is it March 31st? Does that sound right to you, Steve?
Yeah, I believe so.
It's before bear season, which is some places April 1st. So March 31st when it ends. And, towards the tail end of March, I kind of learned this from that biologist, accidentally, that the black female I shot in 2013 was young, and she was calling it a pup. And I'm like, well, that's a giant pup. Once she clarified that that's last year's pup, I was like, oh, okay. So why is she out by herself? That doesn't make any sense that a young dog like that would be on her own. And she's like, oh, she's definitely not on her own. She said, likely there's a severely pregnant female, alpha female nearby, and the pack is probably either found a den site or they're looking for a den site. And the rest of the pack is kind of like doing recon, is the way she described it. They're going out and, scavenging or hunting, or I think that one was looking for squirrels. So they're more likely to, if you see a wolf in March, especially later in March, there's a good chance they're going to be around there for a while. So for example, we saw the one the day before I got the black one, and we saw the black one the next day. And then, 2 days later, some friends went out and they missed another black one. So there's definitely wolves in that area consistently. And earlier that winter, the next drainage over, some out-of-staters came up from Utah and shot like 3 wolves in that same drainage. So it's a spot that, they were hanging out consistently versus traveling around on some people say they'll cover their range in like a 2-week rotation. I was reading an article from this pretty successful wolf hunter. Him and his buddy had killed like 5 in the last 2 years, and he swears that if you see fresh sign, go back 2 weeks later and they'll be there again in that same spot. I don't know if that's true or not, but he's convinced they run like a 2-week rotation. He's talking through the middle of the winter, but in March, I think they're more consistently in the same spot.
That's interesting. It's almost like, equating it to a calving area then, in terms of elk hunting. On that sort of yearly cycle, they'll maybe come back and sort of stick around more, at least in that time frame, in that area.
Yeah, and that area I think is also just happened to be a natural funnel where migrating game were coming back from the winter range and kind of going up to that middle country, started to get back up into the timber. And it might be a spot where the deer and elk will start to drop calves and fawns. So it kind of seems like a perfect equation for wolves to hang out until they have their pups and then stay there and prey on calves and fawns.
Yeah. Cool. So that kind of covers some of the where and the when. So let's talk a little bit more kind of about the how. I mean, you mentioned kind of calling and sort of using that as a locator. Can calling be more confrontational too in terms of drawing them in? Have you had any experience there?
No, not as far as drawing them in. I have gotten in like howling contests with them that have lasted for, like 20 minutes to a half hour where they just answer everything you do. But it's kind of like the same thing as when you're hunting elk and you got that herd bull that will just scream at you, but he won't ever commit. It's really similar to that. There was one hunt, I think we might have posted shots from that hunt, where a buddy took some pretty long shots at one of the wolves. But that day started out at daylight. We went up this trailhead and started howling, and we got answers across the draw, which is, we'd have to drop like 1,000 feet, go back down, then climb 1,000 feet up the other side. So it wasn't an easy task. And plus it was a foot of snow. So we dropped back down the trucks and just crossed the draw, went up the other side, and we closed the gap we were within 1,500 yards of them. And we thought, okay, we're closer now. Let's do a lost cow call or a elk distress, just because, we don't know. We were just trying it. And so a buddy had I think it was a Primos electronic caller, and he didn't have his calls labeled. And so he's going through his calls trying to figure out which call was what. Pretty amateur. And he finally got the lost cow call, and he started doing that, and we got no answer. We knew they could hear us, but they weren't answering at all. And so we were kind of sitting there. We weren't sure what to do. So we just, let's just try howling again. As soon as we howled, they immediately answered, and they just kept on answering. And we realized we were still at that point we realized we were further away than we thought. So we kept climbing up the ridge, and we finally spotted them, and I think there's 5 or 6, and they were kind of spread out on this hillside and just laying down, just bedded down, howling back at us. So we sat there for a while. We weren't sure. I think they were 800 yards away. The closest one was 800 yards away. And there's a massive canyon between us that it wasn't likely that they were going to cross that canyon and trudge up through, on that north face was like 2 feet of snow to come at us. So one guy in the group was a long range guy, and he's like, well, I think I can hit that one at 800. And he just tried about 4 shots and it didn't, he missed. But we tried everything we could think of as far as howling and predator calls to get them to commit, but they were pretty content with just answering us and just sitting there on the hillside. Mm-hmm. So I wish I had a better advice about how to get them to come at you, as far as like the equivalent of like a challenge call in the elk realm. Right. But I really don't know, other than just howling back and forth to them.
Yeah. You mentioned there being 5 or 6. Is that about typical for what you tend to see in packs in your area?
Most of the wolves I've seen have been single or small groups. The one I shot in 2014, he was in a group of 8. That's the biggest I've ever seen.
Okay.
Have you seen any large packs, Steve?
I'm trying to play in my head. I think 1s and 2s is all I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen a large pack. I've heard them. I back when I was early on, I was talking about early elk hunting. I remember hearing large packs, but as far as visually seeing, just 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And that's such a cool, when you hear that whole pack lighten up, it's like it's like the caveman hair on the back of your neck stands up. It's like ancient, like, oh my God, it's eerie, especially in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, we'll get coyotes fired up around here, which is still kind of cool, but it's not the same. That's for dang sure. So, on the other end of tactics, I mean, is it ever beneficial to try and go spot and stalk in terms of like truly, glassing them up or anything like that, or they're just kind of too mobile to really deploy that strategy well?
Well, I guess for lack of a better term, what I usually do is it's basically spot and stalk, but you're trying to locate to see, because they're so hard to glass. Especially in the snow, they just, unless they're black, it's really tough to pick them out. And so, you're trying to get them to answer with a howl, and then from there, once you locate them, then it's a move in close and try to get a shot. Because if I knew a way to make them commit to a call, I'd say something different. But basically, I'm just howling to locate, and then from there, it turns to spot and stalk. And I keep on saying I want to get a long range rifle for just the ability to, because I think they have pretty good eyes, and they're going to pick you off on a ridgetop pretty easily. So you got to, it's tough to get super close, and some experience. There's a guy that actually guides wolves near Boise, or he lives near Boise, but I'm not sure where he guides. But he tells his clients, you better be ready to shoot 500 yards. Mm. And I'm personally not. I can't shoot that far. So, but yeah. So I wish I had more tactics to put out there. I know guys that have predator called. Steve, didn't your buddy Nick get one predator calling?
Yes.
I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but I thought he was out. He's a big coyote hunter and was out predator calling and got some to come in.
Yeah, I don't remember his story on how that went down. I know I think he was coyote hunting and heard wolves, and the next day went back to the same area and killed it. I don't know if he called it in or not, but.
Yes, I don't know if I answered your question there, Mark.
Yeah, I was just wondering in general. I know that once you locate them, it's a spot and stalk in terms of the approach, but I was more thinking out, if they're mobile, was it even beneficial to try and get on a ridgetop, sit put, and then glass one up in the morning? Like, was glassing in terms of the locating strategy ever beneficial? But it sounds like it's probably much more effective to, call for sure, or be on the move and try and cut fresh tracks and then pursue from there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that saying with cat hunting that old tracks are day old donuts. You just, once they're a day old, you just don't. There's no use for them. Same thing with wolves. Day old tracks are nice because at least they're in the area. But I don't. Fresh track, man. That's, you spend the rest of the day till dark looking for them because at least they're within 10 miles of you.
Right. So you mentioned the rifle, and actually just kind of want to conclude things talking a bit about gear, whether that's what you currently use or what you've identified now that you've hunted them. Kind of like you mentioned, being potentially going longer range, some gear changes that you would consider. So what's some of the gear that you found helpful in terms of things that have worked well, and then what's maybe some of the things that you could improve upon in terms of gear to help chase the wolves?
Yeah, definitely a long range setup. I just have a 270. It's honestly the only rifle I have. It's just my all-purpose gun, but I'd love to have maybe a smaller caliber, flatter shooting, like a 6mm or something that just, there's some competition guys out there doing some. I'm not a rifle guy, but it's these Wildcat calibers that are great long distance, and so I definitely like to do that, upgrade my rifle situation, and then practice. I definitely guilty of picking up the rifle as a last resort and going out and shooting it and making sure I'm on, and then going and hunting with wolves. I think you need to be out there being consistently hit, because they're a small target really, and both of those, when I skinned them, there's 4 inches of thick fur and a pretty small rib cage in there to hit. So you got to be pretty good on your shooting. As far as the rest of the gear, definitely some gaiters. If you have access to snowshoes or snowmobiles, that's a plus. Yeah, about all I can think of.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's typically, for the most part, a day hunt. So it's, you're not needing anything too specialized besides just dealing with the weather and the snow, right?
Yeah, if you have the ability to, and if you don't mind cold too much, going out overnight, I think, is a huge thing, a huge tactic as far as they're definitely more vocal at night. And if you could camp on the mountain and hear them overnight, man, there's no better way to have your game plan set for the next day than to do that. So save you some time on driving around trying to cut fresh tracks.
For sure. So. Well, cool. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, not a whole lot really. I as far as the backup on my soapbox, I'd love to definitely see people portray wolf hunting in a good light and not enough of this shoot, shovel, and shut up. And I'm probably not gonna make any friends that way around here, but and the only good wolf is a dead wolf mentality. It's not. I mean, you can think that all you want, but in the public realm and on social media, and maybe just keep those thoughts to yourself a little bit.
Yeah. So I know you're probably going to be getting out after him here in the coming days, maybe coming weeks. If you get one, all that said, you're going to post it?
I was thinking if I did, maybe a picture of some teeth or a picture of a wolf paw and saying wolf down. But that's probably about it.
Like a small detail shot.
Yeah, no closed eyes or bloody anything, or just like got one. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, I hope you post it. Where are you going to post it for the listeners who want to follow you and see the stuff they post? Because it's not, certainly not just wolf hunter. You're, as I mentioned before, you're out there all the time, and not only are you an accomplished hunter for sure, but you have an awesome eye for photography and sharing what you do. So where can our followers check all that stuff out?
Well, that's quite the build up there, Mark. Probably on just on Pure Elevation's Facebook page and probably Instagram. Yeah.
Oh, what are you on Instagram? It's Idaho Jason, right?
Oh yeah, Instagram Idaho Jason, and then probably on the Pure Elevation Productions page as well.
Awesome.
And Hunting Backcountry will probably have something, right?
Heck yeah, man. We always love your stuff.
But now you're giving. I think it's Steve's turn to get a wolf.
Yeah, we're doing a kind of a group hunt. How many guys do we got coming? It's the last weekend of this month. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think there's like 15 of us.
Really?
Nice.
We're just trying to just kind of organize just go out and work together and all hunt a different ridge and just see if we can track them down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully I wonder, have you guys ever done that? I mean, I'm wondering if, you get something spotted, if you could ever, play like a bump or a drive type of approach.
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're gonna go up there and all pick ridges and have radios and talk back and forth, and hopefully if just between communicating and covering a lot of country, we'll get a wolf or two down.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll definitely have to post some stuff from that for sure.
Yeah, and hopefully the longer we can stay up there, someone's bound to find a fresh kill or something, and then you could, maybe hunt around that, because I'm sure if it's fresh, they're going to be back, and all sorts of different things. Where the longer we could stay up there in a group setting, the more advantages we'll have. Yeah.
I think, was it just this week or last week, Corey Jacobson found a fresh kill. It was like a nice elk, a 6x8, I think.
Yeah, I saw that photo on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to hit him up. See, that's the kind of stuff that, networking. Where'd you find that bull at?
Yeah.
And people
awesome.
are much more willing to share that kind of stuff when it comes to wolves. And, you ask someone about a hunting spot for deer or elk, and they look at you like you're insane.
Yeah.
Ask them about wolves, are like, oh, yeah, we saw a pack up this draw and up that draw. And, yeah, everyone's really willing to share that kind of information.
Yeah, it seems like there's almost, a bit more of a we're all in this together thing. Whereas, when it comes to hunting, the trophy big game, everyone's become so secretive and isolated and, to put it bluntly, selfish, which, some of which is right for sure. But it seems like, yeah, as you mentioned, there's guys who, want to support each other and share information, which is really cool to see.
Absolutely.
So, well, Jason, we appreciate your time so much, man. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. I feel like I talked the whole damn time.
That's what you're here for.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you for listening to the Hunt Back Country podcast.